If you started from a clean sheet today, would you recreate your business the way it is, the way it operates, the way it's structured today, or would it look entirely differently? And in today's world, especially with AI in all its forms, it would look very, very different.
Correct. Yeah.
Actually, that's one of the things in this think tank that we're talking about. This is not a simple technology shift, it's a culture shift. And when it comes to culture shifts, if you think about it from an anthropology perspective, it has meaning and rituals that go with new culture. And so understanding that this is culturally massively different, I think, is the key to the game.
Hey guys, welcome to another episode of the Retail Perch. And it looks like, Gary, we're on a bit of a roll. We've got a new team that's kind of keeping us disciplined about putting out an episode every 2 weeks.
That's right. They're keeping us on track.
That's right. That's right. So anyway, I did run into a bunch of people at the show last couple of weeks who actually told me they're listening. So I was like, okay, at least this is not going out in the ether and nobody's listening. So that's
No,
good.
I think we've got a good number of people that listen.
Yeah, well, we want to keep that going. So I'm going to cut down the dad jokes. I think that might be affecting some of our audience. So, although funnily enough, somebody in my team actually shipped me a whole deck of cards with dad jokes in it. It was like, is this a sign that they don't like mine and they want me to use the ones that are in the cards? Or they...
Every conversation can use a dad joke, so
Exactly,
the deck of inspiration is very welcome.
Well, I was going to tell them I think the cards are stacked against me on this one.
Oh my gosh.
Okay, so that's out of the way.
That's out of the way. Now we can get started with the episode. People are wondering what the heck we're going to talk about today. So, but listen, this is Q4 coming up. We're getting into the last quarter of the year, Gary, and it's been a good year for everybody. Hopefully, be a bit more clarity coming into 2026. I think 25 was a year of multiple changes. Well, people didn't know. They woke up in the morning, didn't know what was going to happen next.
That's true. So yes, hopefully a little more maybe clarity around what's happening, but certainly on the technology front, though, things are not going to slow down.
That's
I think
true.
we'll see them continue to accelerate.
Yeah, well, on that vein, I think today's guest will be an amazing conversation. Dave Finnegan, thank you so much again for being on the Retail Perch.
It's great to be here.
Yeah, and Dave, if you can take a few minutes and just introduce yourself, your background, I think it's quite fascinating for our listeners to hear your story.
Yeah, I'm happy to do that. First of all, thank you for inviting me. I always respect those that value the customer experience and put it up front. And I know at Bird's Eye, I mean, that's what you're all about. One of the things that I've always valued, and I think I probably learned this at the feet of Maxine Clark, who started Build-A-Bear, is that it's all about the experience, and it's not about getting tracked. It's really about reflecting that you understand the guest, right? And so when I was invited to talk to you guys, I was really excited because I feel like we're kindred spirits that way. So my background.
So I know you alluded to something about the origin story about Build-A-Bear. Can you tell us a little bit more?
Sure. Yeah. Let me give you a little background and then I'll tell you a little bit about the origin of Build-A-Bear. My background is that I helped to start Build-A-Bear in the late 1990s. It was the Beanie Baby craze, by the way, back then. The way that Build-A-Bear started, actually, interestingly, was our CEO at the time. She had left corporate America. She had been the CEO of Payless Shoes, if you remember that brand. She was a May company. She was a May company powerhouse, to be honest with you. She'd done retail for a long, long time. She had felt like retail had lost the entertainment value of retail. She remembered when you would dress up and you would actually eat at the store that you were going to, and you would be dressed up as part of the theater of retail. She felt like that had gone away in a pretty significant way. Well, she was, it was a Saturday, a rainy Saturday, and she was with her 10-year-old goddaughter, and they were Beanie Baby shopping. And while they were driving around, they were going to all the Beanie Babies were at these little stores, these mom and pop toy shops, if you remember way back then in the 90s. And all of them had signs that they sell Beanie Babies, but when they went in, they were all sold out. And this 10-year-old girl could not comprehend how it could say we sell Beanie Babies on the sign outside, but walk in and there's no Beanie Babies. Like,
Right.
how can this actually be true, right? How can this happen? And so she was a bit incensed, and she said to Maxine, we should just go build these ourselves. And so that afternoon they went into Maxine's little craft shop that she had, and they started building what they were going to do. And as they were going through this and making lists of the animals and what they would call them and things like that, Maxine saw some huge magic in the self-expression that this created in this little girl. And she was like, wow, there is something magical that's happening that's way beyond us going and buying a stuffed animal. It's hitting on a human need of self-expression and a human need of belonging and a human need of creating. And that was the start of Build-A-Bear. That was the spark. And then she was like, okay, I'm going to go figure out how to do this. And that's how Build-A-Bear started. So I helped to, right after she did that, I joined when there was a couple of stores, and then we grew up to over 400 stores in 17 different countries. And we were on Oprah's show, and which is a good way to comp your business, by the way, but not for the second year. It's great it's a huge rocket ship
Imagine, right?
that we were on during that process. But so I did that for a number of years, was heading up the store of the future there, also online video games, gaming, cross channel gaming. And then I left there to go to work for Orvis, which is an outdoor fly fishing brand based in the Northeast. Moved up to Vermont, was a combination of the CIO and the CMO. It was called the Experience Officer. So it was technology and marketing combined. Did that for 8 years. We had our best year in the history of Orvis, a really, really, really strong run of years while I was there. And then I left there in 2022 to take a year to backpack around the planet, kind of an anthropology trip to interview tribes in the Amazon and in Africa. Interviewed the librarian of the oldest library in the monastery of St. Catherine in Egypt, scientists in the Galapagos and Antarctica, and a whole bunch of experiences that were life-changing. Came back from doing that. I got into private equity and go to market, and I'm very heavily involved in communities and community building and retail. So now I'm doing that kind of stuff.
Wow, that's amazing. I mean, you talk about anthropology. I'm outside of technology, a subject I'm deeply, deeply interested in. I try to get my hands on pretty much every book that's to do with it. I just finished reading Dave Grober's and David Wengrow, The Dawn of Everything. I don't know if you read it, but it's a great book.
Interestingly, I'm taking classes to get a master's in anthropology, just one class a semester for the rest of my life. I joke with people that that's the program I'm in. And the class that I'm in right now is the culture of play and the culture of sport and the culture of toys, and how that's, each of those things are a reflection of our broader culture and how important they are to us as humans. So
Interesting.
it fits. I can tell that you've got that in your blood as well. That kind of anthropology is the study of human meaning. And so when it comes to experiences and what you guys deliver and understanding the human meaning, I can see why it's interesting to you too.
Yeah. Like, I mean, one of my favorite books, and I'm sure many people, Sapiens, which I'm sure you read many times, right?
Very
So
good.
yeah, I mean, yeah, it's a fascinating subject, right? I mean, I guess for most people, they're looking for meaning of some sort, and if you can deliver that meaning in the context that they're in, there's nothing like it, right?
Totally.
Yeah.
Totally.
Yeah. That's terrific. So let's maybe I know this is called the Retail Perch. We should be talking about retail. So in the context of retail, I know, off late, a lot of the conversations really been about AI and what technology is doing to retail. And I guess, in some way, you got to think about what is it that never changes about retail, right? And figure out how new technology fits in that context. And, I mean, to me, the one thing that never changes about retail is people needing products, right? How they go about getting those products keeps changing. The technology and the medium through which we advertise and reach people keeps changing. But fundamentally, the product fills a person's need, and the question is, how do you get it to them, right? So in your world, how do you see all this technology impacting retail?
So I'll state for the record, I'm super bullish AI. I'm not an anti-AI guy at all. I'm on the contrary, I think we're going to do amazing things with AI. I think the businesses who understand it will use AI to empathize more with their customers. Empathy is this action word that's often overused or used in the wrong context. I feel like empathy is an investigative process. It's a way of understanding where you seek to understand, and it doesn't end. It's a constant trying to understand. And if we can use AI to unlock that kind of insight into the empathy that we feel for other humans, I feel like it has a huge capability to help us understand ourselves better. And so I'm excited about what that actually means. So it's less automation and more understanding, right? Yes, we'll
So
get.
you feel that AI will help us discern and serve people's needs better because we can understand them better.
Yes. Yes. I feel like the brands who get it will focus on the empathetic understanding of their customer. I think I read something that you wrote, and I've echoed this same thing. Brands, truly great brands, they reflect that they understand you, not that they're tracking you, right? And so I call this more mirrors, less megaphones. This isn't a megaphone. It's a mirror reflecting back that I understand who you are and what your needs are, and strive to deliver on those things. I think really good brands do that. And I'm excited about how AI can help us to understand that even better.
So I completely agree with you, around that AI can help with that understanding, massively. But I guess I would also make the comment that I think having the ability powered by AI or tech to improve understanding is one thing. I think that actual engagement with the shopper, though, is got to be genuine. It's got to be part of the culture of that company, right? It's real. I'm not going to say it's easy, but it's relatively easy to plug in tech solutions today to do personalization or do this or do that. It's a whole different thing to really believe that and embed that level of empathy in the culture of the company.
I think you're spot on, Gary. And I'll share one experience that I had at Build-A-Bear. We were doing the Store of the Future experience. And this was a blend of digital technology and online and offline play together. And if you think about our demographic is a 10-year-old girl. She's the most technically savvy human in the history of humans, right? So literally grown up with her brains wired differently to solve problems differently because of the access she has to information. So one day we'd done the Store of the Future, and we were standing out in front of the store, and we were watching the people go through the store and experiencing it. Early on, by the way, when we launched this, there was a 4-hour wait to get into our store.
Wow.
And actually, so the line went out around the mall parking lot, and we were high-fiving. It was one of the launches of an iPhone, and our line was longer than the Apple line. Now, of course, it was in one store for us at the time. They had that line going for an hour and a half in all their stores. So but we were feeling really, really good about the idea that people wanted to engage in a really meaningful way. So we were standing watching people go through this experience, and the guy that was head over the workshops, who literally all of the stores report to, all the store leadership teams, his name is Paul. Paul turned to me and said, you know, Finn, we get our highest guest satisfaction, which we would literally bonus on from day one. We get our highest guest satisfaction when one human connects to another human at the store. And I was like watching the store interactive, and these kids are literally using digital technology in the store. They literally do online gameplay where they could bring their bear to life. And we would measure what their experience is. And the highest experience was when one human connected to another human. So for example, Gary walks into the store. We say, hey, Gary, what are you here for? I'm celebrating my birthday. Everyone, it's Gary's birthday. Everyone stops, rings a bell, sings happy birthday to Gary. When that communication, that connection happens, something magical happens when two humans connect. And I thought about that, and I thought, I'm a digital guy by training, and that is completely true when two humans connect. Now, sometimes when I've told that story, people think I'm an anti-digital guy and I'm a only face-to-face guy, but I'm not. I'm getting to where you are, Gary, which is there's this human-centered connectivity that has to be part of the culture. And even if it's manifest through AI, or if it's manifest through a digital experience, or it's manifest to face, there's this human connectedness that we have to have as humans. We have it in our souls where we have to fulfill this need. And if we can do that meaningfully, if it's part of our culture, then it makes a huge, huge impact. And so I'm a huge proponent of human connection, whether and you just choose the medium of how we're going to use it to connect, right?
Yeah.
And I think your comment on culture is spot on, because I think organizations that are successful, it's embedded in who they are.
So if you were to translate that into, the kind of the sector that we kind of really talk about, supermarkets and food retail, how do you think something like that translates into that world? I mean, what do you think needs to happen, high frequency, low margin environments, right? And what do you think, how does a store think about building loyalty from that perspective? Because most people think about loyalty, they think about discounts and incentives, and obviously loyalty is much deeper than that. It's such a shallow way to think about loyalty, right? What's your perspective on that?
I think one of the benefits to being a grocer is the frequency, right? And the fact that I'm going to, that this ritual of me going to get food for my family is literally built into our human existence, right? And so that in itself creates this frequency. And I think understanding that frequency and solving from an empathy perspective, solving the needs of our consumer, I feel like the brands that are going to get this, like Bird's Eye, for example, is the brands who get what the human experience is, and it almost feels like telepathic. Like they get me so well that they help me with these things that I know that I need for my family.
Mm.
And I'm reaching out and reflecting that back to you so that you can take advantage of that. I feel like what we're going to see in the next 3 to 5 years is brands that go to a whole different level that feels like, oh my gosh, they really do understand me. Think about our personalization journeys to date. Most of them are really, really bad. They put us in a category and they try to guess what our preferences are based on a category, instead of individually saying, what is it that I need? And what is it that you need? And what is it that you need, Gary? And I think what we're going to see in this next 3 to 5 years, and I think you guys are doing some really interesting work with Whisper around this, is this next generation of almost feeling like telepathic, like it's magic.
Yeah.
Because they know me so well.
Yeah. So what you're saying is, like, building loyalty is really, I guess you earn loyalty. You earn loyalty by really understanding your customer and catering to their needs.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's not the rest of the, I mean, all the other programs, I guess, are needed, but the crux is really, how do you demonstrate your understanding of your customers' needs and respond to that, right?
So I'd add on to the understanding also knowing your customer, your shop, right? Recognition. I mean,
Right,
in my work with, retailers around the world, loyalty, recognition is sort of a universal motivator, if you will, right? You can
right.
give the retailer, you can give any business the tools, CRM systems, all this other intelligence, but to David's point here, it's got to be connected to the human experience, right? Yeah, real quick example. Heather and I, kids are gone, we go out to eat fairly often, right? And we regularly comment on, we go to one restaurant, for example, great Italian place nearby us, where we've gotten to know the whole staff, from the owner to the bartenders to several of the waitresses. And we were just there the other night, and half the place, it seemed like, stopped by our table to say hello. We go to another place just as often, and yet nothing, none of that, no recognition. And it makes you feel differently about frequenting those places.
Yeah, 100%. I think there's no question about, I think I think this is something maybe it's been, and maybe 3, 4 years I've been noticing this at hotels, right? I check in, I've signed in with my loyalty number, and I go, the TV says, "Hey, Joe, welcome to your room," right? And thank you for being whatever member you are. And I mean, I think the sweetest sound to anybody's ears is their own name, right? It's when you hear it coming from
Yeah.
somebody else, especially, right? And I think you're right. And I think that there's got to be ways of using technology effectively to communicate that. And if you're feeding that basic human need, then you earn loyalty. You just think differently. I think we're just wired that way. You just tend to gravitate towards people who seem to recognize you and see you and hear you, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I think so. One observation, and Gary, I'll turn it over to you. I think what's going to happen as we automate and we get more and more automation out of AI, that human experiences will become more and more premium. And so the in-store experience, the human connection experience, the handwritten note experience, they're already important to us as humans. They will go through the roof from an importance perspective, because all of the other pieces are going to be automated. And we still have this human need where we have to make connections with humans. That's embedded in our DNA. So I feel like we're going to see this interesting stuff happening with AI, understanding us better, kind of in a magical way, but we'll also see the in-store experience where it's co-created and co-developed with the customer side by side in the retail location where you're learning and you're getting things from retail. I think we'll see that happen too, because there'll be a premium on it.
Yeah. Can you give us one or two examples in your experience of a retailer that has done a really good job of blending, both the human and physical and digital experiences?
That's a great question. I feel like my examples are probably from the outdoor industry most recently because that's where I worked. But I feel like there's a few that are doing some really, really interesting things because they're telling story. They have a brand story that resonates. The reason that brand storytelling is so valuable is because it allows humans to see themselves in that story, right? And therefore relate to the brand in a much more meaningful way. I think one that we would always use as an example, and I have a lot of respect for, was Arc'teryx. Arc'teryx climbing brand outdoor gear. Their authenticity is through the roof. They're literally on the side of the rock wall testing their products on a regular basis. But I was just in their Soho store, and they put their products in context. So you see it in context. And if you watch humans go shopping, they touch and feel the product. And so they make it very easily, they make the story understood by how they're displaying, for one. built in the context, like it's not just a mannequin standing there, it's a mannequin climbing something that's wearing the clothing, for example, right? And so you're seeing the story and you're touching the product. But then in the center of their store is a mountain scene that's an HD, a 4K screen that's literally a sitting spot where you can literally exhale and breathe a little bit of outdoor. There's plants there. There's climbing gear that's hanging from the wall there, and it's part of their display. And so I feel like brands that get this will have these co-creation spaces. This next generation, I was interviewed in the last couple of weeks. What I love about Generation Z that's coming up is that they're collectors of experience. And they do it because they can share that socially, and that means a lot more to them. Our generation was collector of stuff. This generation is collectors of experience. And I feel like brands who get that their customers are about experience collecting, and that their store is one of their experiences where they co-create in this space where you're there. One of the things that we were doing at Orbis is we were using this space as a way of teaching fly fishing. So we created a fly fishing 101 class where our store guides were literally teaching people how to fly fish in the parking lot or in Central Park or wherever their local water was. And it was free. Moms and sons and dads and daughters were taking these classes. When I was there, we were up to at least 50,000 people who had taken free fly fishing classes.
Wow.
So what had happened is the retail location had transformed from this place that I buy to this place that I learn and that I experience. And as you can imagine, it created in those communities, this is where I go when I need to get advice on fly fishing, when I need to understand it better. And our store associates were amazing at teaching the lessons. And so our why was we wanted to introduce more people to the sport and give them a really easy way to on-ramp.
Nice.
So
nice. That's a great way to think about it. So jumping a little bit to your exploration, the explorer in you, Dave. So you've traveled quite a bit, it seems like. And so what's some of the things that you think, the ways that has transformed you?
That's a good question. I first of all, I did it for a year where I was in a backpack, and with my wife, we were partnered up to go around the planet together in backpacks. And
give us a quick idea. Where all did you go? I mean, you must have been doing a lot.
That's a good question. It was right at the beginning. It was right at the end of COVID. So Omicron was still a thing. Remember,
Yeah.
you couldn't come back to America without a test.
Right.
Well, that was okay because we weren't going to come back to America anyways, anytime soon. So we left, and what was that window created this reduction in tourists and people visiting countries. And we were, in many cases, we were the first people to come back, into those countries. So we spent time in Egypt, and we spent time at the Taj. We were in India. We went to Holi in New Delhi. We spent time in Europe. Our last stop was in Antarctica. We were in South America, Machu Picchu. I belong to a club called the Explorers Club in New York, which is home to many of the most influential explorers on the planet. Like Jane Goodall was a member of this club. Buzz Aldrin is the acting honorary president of the club. So it gave me access to interviewing really interesting people because I would connect with them through this club as we went. But the thing that I think, to answer your question, that really was impactful and changed me as a human is, the first thing is when I got home, I looked at my closet and said, what the holy hell was I thinking when I bought all of these clothes, right? I like, wow, we have so much to be grateful for. And because I'd lived with 2 t-shirts and a pair of shorts and flip-flops and stuff like that. And I just had a different appreciation for that stuff. And that was one thing. I think the other thing that I learned in the journey, which I will forever remember, is I learned this Zen concept that when you're visiting another country, if you go into that country with your cup full, like you already know it all, there's nothing I can learn from you, or I'm here to teach you,
Yeah.
then your cup is full. You can't learn anything. Instead, if you go into the country with your cup ready to receive, right? With your what can I learn from every culture? What can I learn from every society that I visit? Then everywhere you go, you learn something new. And so I remember going through, visiting Holi and spending time with a local family on the rooftop and dancing the night away at Holi with them, for example, and being open to what I could learn from those experiences meant that I would be, I could learn a lot more, I found, than thinking that I knew it all. The other thing that was interesting is when you have new eyes on something, you learn something different. Like that's one of the benefits of having children. You get to see the world again through their eyes. Well, when you travel like this off the beaten track, then you're seeing things for the first time. And that new eyes approach to life and the willingness to learn from it really helped to shape my experience and made it so that I was very, very grateful for it. So those were just a few of the, I wrote a book worth of things that I learned from this, but those
Oh,
were
I'm sure you can write a book
a
on
few
the
of the
whole
big
thing.
ones.
Many, right? Yeah. And how do you think it's affected your leadership style?
I think I'm a lot more empathetic, and I do value people's perspectives and varied perspectives. That doesn't mean it's a democracy where I'm asking everyone to vote. I want to hear everyone's perspective so that the decision I have to make is more informed.
Yeah.
I think I'll share one thing that I learned from a guy at the Explorers Club, which I felt like was a key to innovation and the leadership style. So one of the club presidents recently is a guy named Richard Garriott. Richard was the godfather of the video game industry. In fact, he coined the term avatar that we use all the time. He was the one that came up with that in video game parlance.
It's an Indian word, right?
Yeah, yes, that's
Okay.
exactly right. It's Hindu, right? It was Shiva coming down and going into the form of a man, and when he did,
All the reincarnations of the gods were called avatars.
yes, right, exactly. That's exactly how he got it. He was inspired by Hinduism. That's exactly right. So he called it Avatar in the gaming platforms, and that's how we got Avatar adopted.
Interesting.
So he had seen lots of commercial success. And then he also, from an exploration perspective, is the only human that lived on the International Space Station and had visited the North Pole and the South Pole. So he had reached all of those spots. He's the only person that had done that before.
Wow.
So he had also seen exploration success, right? And we were talking about innovation and exploration and why it's important. And he made this observation that I'll never forget. He said, when you're in an industry, let's say grocery or retail, then the conversations that you have are often an echo chamber. You talk about the same things over and over and over again, right? And we can relate. Every week we're talking about a similar conversation.
Right.
He said, the reason that exploration is so valuable is because it steps you out of an echo chamber and it has you look at problems from a different perspective, the problems that a different culture is having or opportunities. And the really, really innovative people, they learn from those experiences and they bring them back and they apply them to their own experience, their own personal life, their own retail shopping, their own grocery shopping. So the reason that it's important to get out there and to be an explorer is because it creates a little an innovation engine for you to learn from other ways of solving problems. If you think about how our science works, lots of our science comes from professors in jungles testing different things, and then they bring those medicines back, and we've applied them to our medical field in a really, really
Right.
novel way. That's how that's been working.
Yeah. It's the whole interdisciplinary thing, right? I mean, yeah, you think about it, I think a lot of ideas come inspired by something else, nothing to do with your field. And to be able to take that and translate it into your field.
Right.
Yeah.
The real innovators, they're the ones that recognize those things and apply them.
Right.
Yeah.
Those
Right.
are the really,
Right.
really, really good
That's
ones.
interesting. So I know you're an ambassador to the NRF CMO, and you're on the Digital Council, and so where are you seeing retail going next 5 years?
First of all, from a council perspective, I feel like I'm involved in those councils because I was the chairman of the CIO council, and then I was the chairman of the CMO council later. And so I value community tremendously. I value getting into a room with people who are doing exactly what I'm trying to do and comparing notes and saying, man, this is working or that's not working for me, and being really honest and vulnerable. That taught me so much, and it was so, so helpful. And I feel like in the industry, there's not enough of that, that true connection, that true, hey, what do you think? Hey, can pick up the phone. So the more we can foster that from comparing notes with others and community building, the better off that we're all going to be at our jobs, and the better connected we're going to be as people. I think to answer your broader question, which is what's going to happen in the next 5 years, I think we alluded to it a little bit earlier, where I think we'll get a lot better at personalization, more magical, like I get you, more telepathic feeling about personalization. And so I feel like we're going to see some pretty major improvements that way. And the world is ready for that. I think we'll all welcome being recognized differently. And so I feel like we're on the cusp of something really, really magical. I think obviously we're also going to see some major improvements on efficiency, but I think last week I was with a group at David Yurman, CMOs, CIOs, and things like that. And what was interesting is someone shared this stat, and I'm totally going to get the numbers wrong, but I'll give you at least directionally correct. They said, if you look at an AI problem, like an existing experience, and you apply AI to it, people are seeing a 20 to 30% improvement in efficiency. If, however, you look at that whole process and you start from ground zero, starting from scratch, not applying AI, but instead put the lens on if we started it from scratch today and we did it from AI, what would we build? Those that are doing that are seeing an 80 to 90% efficiency difference, because they're understanding the fundamental game that we're playing now. And so I feel like what's going to happen is there'll be more and more of those people who start from scratch. I was sitting in a room where I invited a retailer who is all AI. Her entire organization is AI. There's only 5 people that work for her. And so thinking from scratch on process, on how we can understand the customer, and then building from an AI perspective, I think we're going to see a lot of that in the next 5 years. And I think we'll get monumental efficiency gains and this personalization.
Right. So basically you're saying don't just put a lipstick on a pig, try to rebuild the entire thing, to rethink the whole problem.
Right.
Completely, right?
Right.
Solution, right?
Because we're seeing that really pay people off in a really, really major way.
So do you think people are afraid of I mean, I guess you have a choice. You either make the investment now, you pay now or pay later type of thing, right? So are you better off rethinking that now, or being forced to redo it later?
Yeah, what's interesting is I was with Amazon a couple of weeks ago, and one of the speakers was Media Monks, their agency. And in 2023, they wrote a letter to all of their associates saying, we are going to disrupt our entire business by using AI first. That means we're going to work ourselves out of the traditional job. It exploded. You can imagine how scary that would be, right? Hey,
Yeah.
I'm the one that posts to social media and I'm the one that does this creative content. But what happened is they started retooling in a really meaningful way. And now they're one of the hottest agencies on the planet because now they're on this journey that all of us, they're probably, 5 or 6 steps ahead of others that can help them on that same journey. And it's opening up new jobs that they didn't fully get that they would need. So a prompt engineer, for example, is a job that they're finding that they're using more and more and more of.
Right. And again, Gary, you brought this up on your panel at Grocery Shop, right? I think a lot of this change has to come from the leadership being aligned on this has to change, right? These transformations are not, they're leadership driven in some sense, right?
Well,
They don't come bottom up, they come top down.
no, they have to be, in my
Right.
mind, right?
Yeah.
Top, because it is so all encompassing, right? And as you're both sort of pointing to, I think one of the biggest challenges, and again, comes back to culture here, is, identifying and letting go of the we've always done it this way type of thinking that is prevalent across every organization today, right? And being able to let go of that. And, as Dave spoke to a few minutes ago, starting with that blank sheet of paper. If you started from a clean sheet today, would you recreate your business the way it is, the way it operates, the way it's structured today, or would it look entirely differently? And in today's world, especially with AI in all its forms, it would look very, very different.
Correct. Yeah.
Actually, that's one of the things in this think tank that we we're talking about. This is not a simple technology shift, it's a culture shift. And when it comes to culture shifts, if you think about it from an anthropology perspective, it has meaning and rituals that go with new culture. And so understanding that this is culturally massively different, I think, is the key to the game, as Gary indicated.
Yeah, I remember reading this in, I think, I want to say Sapiens. I think when humans discovered fire for the first time, they discovered the capability to obviously single-handedly destroy an entire forest by themselves, right? And that tool, that ability was transformative in how we ate, what we ate, what we gathered around, how we stayed warm, how we survived in places. And I mean, I think I don't know how transformative AI is going to be, but I think the very fact that we can condense the world's information into a system where everybody can be, you kind of democratized knowledge and intelligence in some fashion, right? It's now accessible to everybody. Before it was stuck in libraries and you needed to, go know exactly which book to look into to get the answer for what
Yeah.
you want. Now you've kind of democratized that entire thing. So the question now is how do you apply creativity to that to differentiate yourself? Because knowledge is no longer a barrier, right?
Yeah, it's a really good point. So in my classes that I'm taking for anthropology, master's in anthropology, I wrote a thesis a couple of months ago about the power structure of our cultures. If you think about power and you think about who has power in societies, it's generally around who has knowledge. Think about your doctor, your
Yeah.
lawyer, your accountant. These are people who have power because we trust them to give us their advice. We literally give them our kind of future of how we're
Right.
thinking about how our healthcare is going to turn out or our future finances. So we give these people a lot of power in a meaningful way, and that's how all cultures are structured. Is there are people that are power. But if you think about AI, to your point, for the first time in human existence, you're going to have a PhD in your pocket of every topic, right?
That's right.
And so what does that do to the power structure inside of our cultures? The closest thing I can think of that might give us some indication is, you know, in the Middle Ages, when the literacy rate was very low, I would go to church, I would hear from the priest who was reading Latin. I didn't read, so I would listen to what that meant, and I would try to internalize what it meant for me. Then the printing press gets invented, and suddenly literacy explodes as a technology change, and the ability for me to make my own decisions, because I can now read the Bible myself, or the Hindu text, or whatever
Yep.
religious text
Yep.
is. I can now read that myself. That changes in a significant way the power difference. And I feel like we're going to go through this power shift in a meaningful way where we have PhDs in our pocket.
Yeah, you're absolutely. I think it was 1440, right? That's when the Gutenberg printing press was invented.
Yeah.
Pretty much, you think about 50 years from then, I think 1490 to 1500 was probably the most transformative decade in human history, right? Because the route to India was discovered, America was discovered by the Europeans. It completely changed the world.
Yeah, actually, my wife and I were watching something last night about India. And at that time, across the world, there was an enlightenment. And I think in part, it was because of unlocking the ability to read for people.
Yeah. Oh,
And,
absolutely,
and
absolutely.
so,
And if you go to Portugal, there's lots of these paintings and structures dedicated to the age of discovery, the age of exploration, right?
yeah.
It's a big thing there. Of course, Vasco da Gama and all these guys is a huge thing, right? So
Yeah,
yeah, this is
Yeah, so I agree with your comments around AI unlocking knowledge, if you will. But I think in another sense, it sort of shifts the power, as Dave, you were just referring to, right? You still have to know how to, write that prompt, ask that prompt, access that knowledge or that information to get from what you're after. And I think in my mind, related to that is, even once I have that knowledge, what does it mean? What do I do with it?
one of the things that came up in the conversation from last week with a bunch of retailers was, if you think about retail, take AI out of it for a second. Let's say you have a new report that was written in your organization. The first thing, if it goes outside of what you think it's going to say, is this data correct? Did you pull it correctly? Is the definition
Yep.
correct? That trust of the data and understanding, then you have to walk through. We've all been in IT where you have to say, this is how we got there. It went into the system. It is correct. That same transformation of our brains into trusting AI is also going to have to transition. In other words, we're going to have to see what it says, get comfortable with it, walk through how they actually got it so that it actually helps us to trust more. And I feel like that transition is going to happen, and we're going to have to go through this trust process where we're like, that doesn't sound right or sound like what we expected it to be. Turns out it can educate us in this whole process. And that trust process of rebuilding, we're going to have to go through as
That's a great call out. And Shaker, you were right at the beginning. This is going to be like a 2 or 3 part conversation.
I know, right? I mean, it's like, lots of fascinating topics, but, I think we want to leave the listeners wanting more, and like, we need one more episode of this. So I think we're going to have to call you back here.
That's no
Find
problem.
another,
Have a
here.
dinner and we'll host people there or something.
There you go. Exactly. Exactly. No, it's been a fascinating conversation. I think, I think retail itself, is such a fascinating, it's one of the oldest industries there is, right? And I think every time we have these conversations, I just realize that it just takes, although it's so simple, right? You're selling products to people. There's just so much that goes around to support that experience, whether it is supply chain, inventory, or e-commerce, or technology, or data or, you know, everything from the quality, transparency. There's just so much to it. It's just, it's never ending, you know? So it's been a fascinating conversation. I definitely want to thank you for being on as a guest, and we'll get you back, I promise, because I'm not done with this.
Yeah, no, there's a lot more to discuss.
Yes, yes, a lot
It
more
was
to discuss. But
a lot of fun. I appreciate you
yeah,
inviting me.
absolutely. Thank you so much again, and figure out how we can get you back on the Retail Perch. But Gary, anything close
No,
out?
Dave, thank you. This has been a great discussion and look forward to the next one and look forward to talking with you again soon.
And hopefully you're writing a book, Dave. That's probably
Yes.
something you're working on, memoirs
Uh,
or something.
I have a lot of notes, but no book. So just
You know,
stuff that I
AI can help you with that.
There you go. Just give all the notes to the AI and write a
That's
book
right.
on it.
Just feed all those notes into
Now that is a
ChatGPT or
good
something.
idea.
Yeah, yeah.
I look forward to our next conversation. This was a lot of fun. Thanks for taking the time and including me. I always learn so much from these conversations. So thank you.
Thank you.